In this episode, we'll be talking openly about grief, loss, and the emotional impact of unexpected career and life transitions. If at any point you are feeling overwhelmed, depressed, anxious, or having thoughts of harming yourself, please pause this episode and reach out for professional support right away. This podcast is a coaching space, not a substitute for mental health care. You deserve care, support, and help beyond what a podcast can provide. I've included national crisis and mental health hotlines in the description of this episode, and I encourage you to use them or contact a trusted professional if you need immediate support. You do not have to go through this alone. Hello, and welcome to Rising Forward with Your Coach Terri. This is episode 1, Naming the Grief. If you are listening while driving or walking, cleaning the house, multitasking, or just sitting quietly, I just want you to know you don't have to do anything. You don't need to take notes. You don't need to figure anything out. You can just listen and rewatch later if you need to. I am really honored to welcome you to the very first official episode of Rising Forward with Your Coach Terri. Today, we will be talking about grief, but not the kind that comes with the loss of a loved one. And since there's a lot to cover in this episode, I will be referring to my notes often. Also, since this is my first episode, um, I am learning how to do this, so thank you for offering me grace as I journey through this episode with you. And just a quick note, I'm a holistic life, career, and executive coach. I am an ACC certified coach through the International Coaching Federation. But the thoughts shared here are my own and do not represent any organization. This episode is not therapy. It is not a coaching session. It's just a reflective space informed by how I view everything through a coaching lens. And it's just offered for listening. We're not about fixing anything in this episode. So before we begin, let's take a breath together. Let's just be present in this moment and let's get started. So, in order to set the context, I just want to say that we know hundreds of thousands of Black women have been pushed out of the workforce this year. So this is not grief about just losing a job. This grief is layered and complex and nuanced. And it's heavy in ways that don't always express itself in everything that we're listening to. So before we talk about moving forward, it's okay if we're talking about what we're holding on to right now, individually and collectively. Because this grief is not just personal, it is historic, it is systemic, it is political, and it is very real. As Black women who have been pushed out of organizations or agencies that we've served with integrity and skill, this loss goes deeper than a paycheck. It reaches into our identities, into how we're seen, into how our intelligence, our education, our leadership, and excellence are suddenly questioned or reframed to fit a narrative or erased altogether. And this experience connects to a long history in our country where Black women have never been fully recognized as whole human beings with ambition and skill and vision and feelings and a desire to serve with dignity and love. And it's even more compounded when the work that is centered on DEI for some, and that means diversity, equity, and inclusion, is politicized or devalued. It just adds more layers to that grief. Because now it's not only about losing a role, it's about being told that the work itself does not matter. The kind of grief that we're going through right now, it's not sitting quietly, it is festering. It is showing up in our bodies. It's showing up in our sleep. It's showing up in our relationships. It's showing up in how we breathe. It's showing up as background noise. The kind of background noise is like, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if I can't care for my children? What if I can't take care of my elderly parents? What if something happens to my health? What if I can't pay my loans or my mortgage or my rent right now? What if I lose even more before I've had a chance to recover? This experience lands differently depending on where you were in your career, too. So if you were just getting started in your career, you didn't have a safety net. If you were in your mid-career, your career is holding up your mortgage, your rent, your family, your parents, and other responsibilities. And if you weren't able to retire early, or if you were able to retire early, it affects how much you save, the leeway you have in figuring out how far your finances can go. All that matters. And so when I think about it through a coaching lens, you know, um, when I think about how to acknowledge what's actually happening in the moment, and I've been using the word moment a lot because this is not our forever. It really just is a moment in the timeline of our lives. But when I think about it through a coaching lens, I am not saying to stay positive. I am not asking us to rush in to fix anything. And I'm not minimizing what we're going through. But what I will offer are some questions that I might use in a coaching space. And these questions aren't meant to demand answers. You don't have to respond to them at all. You can simply listen or pause or come back to them. This space belongs to you. But if I was a coach, I might ask a question for someone trying to name grief, right? I might ask them, what part of your experience feels most unseen or misunderstood right now? What part of your experience feels most unseen or misunderstood right now? And depending where that answer goes, I might ask, what are you grieving that goes beyond the loss of employment itself? Let me say that again. What are you grieving that goes beyond the loss of employment itself? Because often what's underneath that grief is like feeling the loss of safety, the loss of dignity, the loss of integrity, the loss of identity, the loss of trust. I might ask, what sense of stability has shifted for you during this transition? What sense of stability has shifted for you during this transition? Because there's also fear here. The foundation is trembling, right? Or is broken altogether in some places. And that's not an exaggerated fear and it's not an imagined fear. It is real. I might ask, what feels most uncertain for you at this moment? What feels most uncertain for you at this moment? I might ask, what responsibilities feel heaviest on your heart right now? What responsibilities feel heaviest on your heart right now? And before I move on, the last thing I would say is I would offer to any of us going through this right now is that fear does not equal failure. Fear does not mean failure. Fear does not equal failure. Fear does not mean failure. Grieving about this moment in your life does not mean that you're stuck. It means you're human and that you're in the middle of something that is genuinely hard. And so when we are talking about naming grief, we are talking about naming it without immediately trying to fix it. And I would offer an exercise if you're willing to do it on your own time, but there's no obligation to do so. Simply write in your journal or just say aloud, what I am grieving right now is. What I am grieving right now is. There's no explaining you have to do. You don't have to edit your journal. You're just naming it, just naming your grief. And as Black women, collectively, we have to consider the collective and historical weight of this grief right now. Because layered into all of the other stuff is the reality of how systems have responded to Black women, how quickly our work is minimized, how our excellence is questioned, how assumptions are made about us and our work. So here's another question you can sit with. What assumptions about your work or your value have you been encountering? What assumptions about your work or your value have you been encountering? And here's another. What emotional weight are you carrying that might not even belong to you? What emotional weight are you carrying that might not even belong to you? Because we all know that not everything you're holding inside is yours. And we all know that not everything you're holding inside is yours to keep. Because there's also history here, too. Collectively in this country, Black women have faced uncertainty many times before. We have faced other people's fear, other people's suspicion. We've done all that before. And how have we responded? Leaning on our faith, leaning on our communities, leaning on our combined courage, leaning on our truth. So let me ask you, what inner strength or wisdom has carried the women in your family through uncertain times? What inner strength or wisdom has carried the women in your family through uncertain times? What inherited strength or wisdom has helped you overcome challenging times before? What inherited inner strength or wisdom has helped you overcome challenging times before? Sitting honestly with those answers honors our ancestors. And I would like to offer or invite you all to watch Julian Johnson Law on YouTube. Julian Johnson Law has been putting out stories that tell the experience of all of our ancestors, their resilience, their bravery in the face of injustice, the countless ways that people have tried to beat them down. The stories are extremely heavy, but they are also amazing because the resilience of our people is a testament to who we are. So please, if you can follow Julian Johnson Law on YouTube, you will get so much out of it. I'm not affiliated with him at all. I just happened on his podcast about 8 months ago, and I watch it frequently. So before we have any conversation about next steps, we really have to think about what our capacity is, right? If we're just naming grief and we're processing it, we might not be ready to move on yet, right? And so I would ask, what pace feels respectful of your body and your central nervous system right now? What pace feels respectful of your body and your central nervous system right now? I could also ask, what feels like a meaningful way to stay connected to yourself in this moment? What feels like a meaningful way to stay connected to yourself in this moment? We're not talking about being productive. We're not talking about trying to impress anybody with our bravery and moving forward right now. We're just trying to take meaningful steps to understand our capacity, what we're ready to move on to. And so to wrap this up, I just want to say you are not imagining the weight at this moment. You have a collective of Black women carrying it with you right now. And we are not weak because we feel grief right now. We are not weak because we need support in this moment. We can't rush grief, but we can name it and meet it with honesty. This is how we rise forward. So I will leave you with one final question. What support would make this moment feel less isolating? What support would make this moment feel less isolating? Now, ladies, allies, it's time to take care of ourselves. Let's pray. Let's drink water. Let's breathe. Let's get out and surround ourselves with God's nature. I will tell you, prayer works. Prayer works, prayer works, prayer works. And I would also say to please reach out to someone if you need to. Don't be afraid to do it. Don't be ashamed of it. Because guess what? You are worthy You are capable, and this moment, however heavy it is for all of us, it is not the end of our stories. Thank you for listening. I will see you next time.